So welcome everybody, regardless of your role. We're glad you're here, and we hope that there's something in this for you. Let's see, let's go ahead and close that one. We encourage participants from the roles we outlined to join, and we wanted to spend a few minutes explaining that. You could look at each of our presentations as singularly focused. Kim's towards HR, mine towards strategy, and Paula's geared towards the sales and marketing professionals and branding. The shift in business that we refer to is what's driving this content being universal across these functions. And as we progress through the content, we'll continue to address the connections between the three and reinforce why sales should care, for example, and influence internal employee engagement, why HR should care and influence branding, for example. In essence, why today everyone in the organization should understand how their role plays an integral part in authentic stakeholder connection. After these 3 sessions, Kim's today and mine next week on next Tuesday, and Paula's on the 26th, we'll be doing a panel to bring it all together. In all 3 of the webinars, we're going to use some language, and we wanted to go over that, what we mean when we say things like stakeholder. So a stakeholder is anyone who's impacted by your company or your organization, or anyone who has an impact on your company or organization, its behavior, and its purpose or outcomes. Starting with employees, it includes suppliers, partners, competitors, the communities where your supply chains operate, for example. Shareholders are, of course, included in this, and customers. What do we mean when we say authentic connection? It's about the company and its stakeholders being in transparent alignment. It's about owning what it stands for and acting with intention against values. It's about really understanding who we are as organizations and how we operate in the world and the impact we have. With sustainability being such a hot topic today, in this context, we're speaking to a strategy that has staying power in the new shifting business world. Our belief is that authentic connection is at the center of a strategy, and that it's not just sustainable, but wildly powerful in terms of achieving long-term success. Okay, with all that said, I'll introduce today's presenter, Kim Cadle. Kim is the founder of Pure Ambition, a firm focused on helping businesses create a brighter future through sustainability, philanthropy, and engagement strategies. Following more than 20 years' experience managing teams in marketing, communications, and large-scale business operations, Pure Ambition was founded on a deep passion for driving necessary changes in the way business operates, focusing on the balance of people, planet, and profit for long-term success. She's worked in a variety of business environments, from small service agencies to large manufacturing corporations, and has an innate ability to simplify the complex while energizing groups towards a common purpose. I met Kim during a training program, and the training program was not about sustainability or the triple bottom line. It was focused on relationships and how to create amazing relationships with others. But Kim and I immediately connected around our purpose and passion, and have stayed in conversation. And I'm really excited to be working with her this morning and to get this kicked off. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Kim. You can get started.
Thank you, Jeremy. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Hopefully you can hear me okay. If there is a point in the presentation, or if I am feeling faint, please just go ahead and put something in the chat window, and Jeremy can cue me as well to speak loudly. So I'm just really appreciative and grateful for everyone taking time out of their day to be here today. I know that time is extremely valuable, and I don't take that lightly, so really my goal is to make sure you leave with a tremendous amount of value. And it really means a lot to me that so many people are here and open to our message. It's very inspiring, actually. So typically I do workshops. This is my first webinar, so it's a new experience, and it's kind of interesting because I love doing workshops just from the perspective of interaction and collective energy in a room. So I'm really going to try to bring that to today's interaction, try to do things that through polls and chat, so we can be part of the collective community here, even though we're not seeing each other. And I definitely do feel the energy. It's really great to see people and old friends who are participating. So thank you, and to all the new people I haven't met before. The best part about doing a webinar versus a workshop is I didn't have to worry about whether or not I had a good or bad hair day. So that's kind of cool. Very different. So a little bit about me briefly after Jeremy gave you a good overview. I just want to share with you what my why is. Why am I here? Why am I excited about this and want to share this information? My mission and goal is to create a brighter future. And I'm really on a quest for that. And the path I see to achieving that is by bringing heart back to business. I feel like somewhere along the way we missed our path and got off course. And quite frankly, from my perspective, not to be a Debbie Downer, but the future as it stands today isn't too bright. So I'm really compelled to help work towards a brighter future. I mean, if you think about the fact that we had a 40-minute power outage during the Super Bowl, I think that speaks volumes about what's going on with the infrastructure in our country. You know, what's driving this? I think it's all part of a greater theme and something we need to pay attention to because it's all connected. So my passion and business is all about corporate social responsibility and that balance that Jeremy spoke of about people, planet, and profit for long-term success. And really, that all starts with meaningful connection. So that's what today is all about. So, what can you expect from today? First, we're going to talk about what is engagement inside the organization. Why is it important? How can you create it authentically? That's really the gist of the content today. And most importantly, I'm hoping that you're going to be inspired to take action. That's really my goal, is to walk you through some real tangible things you can do to take action in this area. So first thing I want to start with is there's this little dude over in the corner, kind of with his arms up and an arrow going in front of him. And I get a lot of reactions to this icon. So I was thinking in the chat window, if you guys could share by typing there what this little guy represents to you, that would be helpful for me. So we'll just wait for responses. So now I'll just clarify, there's a chat window in your control panel, and you can type in there. And Jeremy just showed, type your response here. So when you see this icon with the arrow, I'm just curious how you react to that and what it makes you think of. All right, onward and upward, people and profit, says Paula. Anybody else? Got a shy group today? Looks like we have some questions. No, okay, that's just feedback. Okay, so what this guy indicates for me personally is an employee who's so engaged that they're having a great time at work, and oh, by the way, that's influencing the results of the organization. So that's what the icon is here to represent, and that's what I use to kind of communicate what employee engagement really is. And if we go into the definition a little bit deeper, you know, we can talk about engagement, we can talk about engagement inside the organization. I apologize that my slides are getting ahead here. It's trying to navigate two windows. So sorry about that. Let's go back to the definition. So, you know, it's a common term, and this is how I like to phrase it. It's really beyond satisfaction and beyond loyalty. It's taken it a step further, and it's repeated positive experiences that strengthen the emotional connection to your company and brand. So that can be with any stakeholder, right? Jeremy spoke about who all our stakeholders are. When they're engaged, whether it's positive or negative, it's an emotional connection. So inside the organization, it's the connection that an employee feels towards the organization, which influences his or her behavior, and also the level of effort in work-related activities. And if we take that a step further, also it engages their interactions with stakeholders inside and outside the organization, all the way through to friends and family. So when we speak of engagement, we're really talking about emotional connections that we want to be positive that create a bond. So, you know what it is. What's at stake, right? Let's talk about it. People crave connection. I think that's something we see day in and day out. And right now, in the advent of social media, we are all on our devices, heads down, and searching for connection through technology. Some people prefer to work alone and not be interactive. Others in collaborative environments do really well. And what we're really speaking to is the connection to the workplace itself. So employee engagement is a connection to the organization. So when you think about how much time we spend at work, when are we at our best? And what are the drivers of that? There's a direct correlation, in fact, between meaning in the workplace and results. And what I like to always say is we get to hit our numbers and have fun while we're doing it. I mean, how cool is that, right? And to flip it, what's the cost of not making meaningful connections at work and having meaning? Lost productivity is number one. It's up to 35% of payroll is left on the table due to a lack of engagement in organizations. And there's studies that prove this out. So HR folks on the phone, if you know the value of your payroll and you calculate 35% of it, that's quite a bit of money. And it's really there for you to grab. So regardless of your role in the company, it's really something to care about because it directly impacts the bottom line. Additionally, employees are your brand ambassadors. So the level of an energy applied to their work directly correlates to their connection with not just the work, but the people they work with and the organization itself. So it really translates to how they feel, and it gets back to that emotional bond. And then how they bring that to their personal life as well. So again, it translates to the brand, and we're going to look at some studies that further validate the connections. So I have some favorite studies. There's tons of studies out here to support this. If you go to my website, I have quite a few of them on there for business case development, engagement, among other things. But these are kind of my top 3 go-tos. And let's start with the Gallup study. So when Gallup ran this study, they expected that these 2 things would be 2 directional. In other words, higher engagement leads to more financial success, money. And they also expected that more financial success, money, would lead to higher engagement. And they were pretty surprised to find that the latter was not true, and it only operates in one direction. And I'm guessing some of us, at least, have worked in organizations that were highly financially successful, yet we weren't feeling it. We were working really hard, but we weren't engaged, we weren't loving what we were doing. And that's really what it speaks to. And if we take it a step further, that same study found that companies with high engagement experience this level of success. 37% less absenteeism and turnover, 49% fewer safety incidents, 60% fewer product defects, significant, 18% higher productivity, and 16% higher profitability. Those are pretty strong statistics there. So if we look at the Towers-Watson study, every 15% improvement in employee engagement excuse me, correlates to a 2% improvement in operating margin. So I don't know if we have any financial folks here, but that's pretty significant as well. 2% improvement in operating margin based on every 15% improvement in engagement. And then the last study I really like is by Hewitt Research, also 2010, 63% differential in total shareholder return for companies with high employee engagement versus those with low engagement. So the business case is certainly there. These are powerful statistics that really shouldn't be ignored. So what's the point? There's no lack of research to support that an investment in engagement has a tangible impact on financial results. So it's not just that we feel good, like I said earlier, it's actually that we're hitting our numbers too. So it's very rewarding on many levels. So where do we go from here? This is where it kind of all starts. This is really key. To authentically connect with the outside world, you need to connect with yourself first and foremost. So the key to authentic stakeholder engagement starts inside the organization. That's why we're starting the webinars here. Most of us can relate to self-awareness, our own self-awareness, and how it can impact our results. This is really about self-awareness at the company level. So a connected strategy that leverages the culture to drive transparency and action is what we're talking about. From self-awareness comes intentional action. From intentional action, we can begin to have real conversations with others. And when we don't act intentionally and without self-awareness, what happens? We get into real trouble. we get into trouble, we tend to be focused on digging out of it and moving in fear-based behaviors, right? So that can be very dangerous. And the best example I have of this is what happened with Susan G. Komen last year and the whole Planned Parenthood situation. You know, they were trying to be loyal to everyone but themselves. And you can see what happened. They lost sight of themselves, and they didn't own their choices, and it just kind of snowballed from there. So that's a good example of not being connected to yourself first. So again, a great way to relate to this is to think about your own interactions and how that can translate to the organizational level. Really what I'm sharing is life principles applied to the workplace. That's what we're talking about. Okay? So, engagement theory. We know what engagement is now. I've covered why it's important. And now what we're going to move into the real deal is how do we inspire it? So as I mentioned earlier, you know, there's tons of case studies and company results that prove out the business case. And there's also tons of theory on creating engagement. So I have two that I really like to use in my work that resonate best for me, and I want to share with you these concepts. So we're actually going to run a poll now. Daniel Pink, author of Drive, and we're going to run a poll to understand how many people are familiar with Daniel Pink's work. Okay, so we actually do have a few people here who are familiar with Daniel Pink and his theory on what motivates people. What motivates us? What matters to us? And his theory and all of his research comes out with three core things: autonomy to do the work, mastery, and purpose. And his research actually includes a fascinating MIT study on financial reward systems and their impacts on motivation. When we always go and we want people to work a little harder, we try to throw money at them, right? Give them a carrot, and they'll meet the task. They'll work a little bit harder for us. His studies show that actually money for your top performers is a demotivator. And the only application of money as a motivator is in non-skilled based work. So in cognitive applications, where you need people to work outside just the basics that you're going to tell them how to do something, money demotivates. People need to be connected to something bigger than that. They need to be connected to the purpose, they need autonomy, and they need ability to master. The only time money really comes in is if you're not paying a fair wage. That's the other time. So pay people fairly from the get-go, and it takes money off the table, and it becomes a non-issue. And then they're looking again for other ways to connect and have meaning with the work. There's a great organization called Net Impact. They're a nonprofit out of San Francisco, and they work with college and university students to help them create cause-related careers in whatever function they're in. And they did a 2012 study on what workers want, and that study found that 58% of respondents, and these are mostly MBAs, stated, I would take a 15% pay cut to work for an organization with values like my own. Transformational, really, when you think about that. So I encourage you, Daniel Pink, there's a YouTube video that you can download. Just type in Daniel Pink Drive, and it's kind of like the Reader's Digest version of this book. And it actually is a really engaging way to share his research. So I definitely think you guys should go take a look at that for sure. The second theory that really resonates for me comes from a book called Tribal Leadership. And I had the pleasure of hearing Tony Shaw from Zappos speak at a conference. And as most of you know, Zappos kind of has the cornerstone on customer loyalty, and they've built a whole separate business around that, and how to really create wow moments for your customers. And they do that by working inside the organization first. So when I went to hear him speak, I already heard a lot of his theory and wasn't sure what I was going to get out of it, but he's a major inspiration and consistent innovator doing really great things in the world. And he spoke about this book, Tribal Leadership, which did not exist when he created the culture at Zappos, but he did end up writing the foreword for it, and it really confirms that this research and this theory works. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that for a moment here. So first of all, what is a tribe? A tribe, according to the book, is a group for anyone from 20 to 100 people. They could be within the same department. They could work on cross-functional teams, special projects, or they could be their own clique within the organization. And tribes have great influence over each other and how kind of they impact the organization. So according to the book's authors who were consultants in large organizations, tribes fall into one of 5 key stages. So they go through a stage. And the first stage, not everybody goes through this. You fit into one of these 5. Let me clarify that. Stage 1 is life sucks. And it's really the smallest % of the population. And these are the people that, are really the sociopaths of the world, so to speak. They're the dangers to society. So you're very small. Hopefully you don't have any of those in your organization, a very rare group. Stage 2, though, is my life sucks. So basically it's the victim behavior. And 25% of tribes fall into this stage in organizations. So those are your victims. Those are the people who spend a lot of time complaining about how awful everything is and wasting a lot of time and energy and that productivity that's left on the table. Stage 3 is the most common, and it's I'm great. So I'm great, you're not. So this is about 40% of organizations, and these are the people that say, oh my gosh, I have to do everything myself. Oh, if only everybody would just work as hard as I do. I have to lead this project and pick up everybody's slack. So it really is the most common tribe, and I ran employee engagement surveys for a number of years in the early 2000s with some teams that I had, and we ran them a number of years consecutively. And the context of the survey was to rate the team performance. How does the team operate? Does the team understand the mission and the vision? Does the team have the tools and resources to do its job? Do we have healthy team dynamics? All of those sorts of questions. And there was one question about my ability to do the work. And it didn't matter what type of group we ran the survey with, year over year, self-efficacy, personal ability to do the work, always ranked much, much higher than the other areas, but by at least 2 points typically. So this is the belief, again, that I can do it, everybody else is the problem. So that's common. So what we want to do is move teams through the next 2 stages. Stage 4 is we're great, and that's an evolved tribal culture. So that's we as a team are great. We can conquer anything. This is where you see high-performance work teams within organizations. It's a special project everybody wants to get on. It's the department that always seems to be thriving and doing well. And what happens here is oftentimes these groups can become elitist is one of the issues. And other teams may have envy, and there's still some separation. So it's great. Stage 4 is wonderful. You have some high performance. But really where you want to get to stage 5, which is life is great. So we went from life sucks to life is great. And when people are operating from that framework, anything's possible. And the theory of the book is that the way to get to life is great is through values and noble cause connection. So when people understand the set of values and feel connection to that and the cause, and when it's demonstrated through an obsessive commitment by the organization to honor the truisms, that's where the real magic happens. So the goal is really to identify where your culture sits in those stages and then use some of the tools we're going to talk about to move people up through stage 5, ideally. And if you look at Zappos, again, look at what that culture is capable of. It's pretty phenomenal. So I have one of my favorite quotes is, you can't motivate anyone. You can only create an environment in which individuals respond because they choose to, right? I can't say I'm going to motivate you. No. What I'm going to do is create an environment that you hopefully are inspired by. Okay, so how do we do that? So I take these theories that I believe in, and I've created these 3 spheres of influence on employee engagement. And so it kind of combines all the work, and it's very much overlapping. And engagement really is about purpose-driven work, foundationally, a culture of trust, and connection, work mastery. These are the 3 areas that really you want to focus on to drive engagement in your company. And we're going to talk about next, how do you do that, right? So I'm going to focus now on each of the 3 spheres, and I'm going to start with purpose-driven work. So, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And this is a key phrase that I really love from Simon Sinek, who's the author of the book, Start With Why. Okay? So if you think about, well, employee engagement is typically an HR role, it really needs to come from an integrative, collaborative, and cross-functional approach. So this model not only does stuff for your team members, but also with your customer messaging and experiences, your brand authenticity, all of those things. So if you start operating in this manner, it unlocks the capability to engage across all stakeholders. Right? And so what I love about this, so the theory is you start first with why, then how, and last what. So outside in is conventional. That's typically how we work. What does everybody want from us, our stakeholders? And we react. Inside out, remarkable. What do we believe in? Why are we here? Why are we doing this? What is our cause? And then taking it to, how are we going to be? How are we going to behave in the world at large? And then last, now what are we going to do? What's really cool is once you adopt this model at the macro level, you can totally apply it to any major decision your company's facing. You have a big project, a big strategic plan that you're working on, you can always start with, why are we doing this? How are we going to be? And now what are we going to do? And it's a great way to get a team really behind the cause because they're connected to it. So just like I recommended Daniel Pink's YouTube, Simon Sinek has a talk on YouTube also that is very inspiring and speaks to all of this, and he really shows the difference because if you look at lots of companies sell the same products, the remarkable ones are the ones that start with why, and he can demonstrate that all the way from back to the Wright brothers to Apple and Steve Jobs. Okay, so when we take this a step further, right, first why, then how, then what. It's really about your purpose at the center. Again, why are you there beyond financial results? What is it that you're bringing to the world at large? This is the why. Do you know? And a fancy mission statement with 4 to 5 sentences and a lot of really impressive words is not a compelling purpose or mission, right? And then you go into the how. Again, how are you going to be? That's your values. And that's something you really want to identify and work with your employees on. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. But we're going to run a poll now and to check in and see how many of you and your organizations have clarity around this. So that's actually, we're at 64%. And actually those are pretty impressive results, I would have to say. So 63% of you said yes, we share our purpose and values. That's an amazing, awesome start. Some purpose, not values, some values, not purpose, and some neither, but that's actually really a small subset. So that's inspiring for me to see, really exciting. And how you go about identifying those values, we're not going to get into too deeply because it's really dependent on the size, history of the company, and structure of your organization. But good stuff. Thank you. So continuing on purpose-driven work. So this is a study that was done in 2013, very fresh, by Temkin Group, which is a customer experience management consulting firm. And this is a study they did on employee engagement. And their findings were that inspired employees are a huge asset. So when asking, red is inspired by the company's mission and white is not inspired by the company's mission. So when employees are inspired by the company's mission, their likelihood to do something that is good for your company, even if it is not expected of you, is much higher than those who are not. Their likelihood to stay late at work if something needs to be done after your normal workday ends. Again, significant difference, inspired versus not. Help someone you work with even if they don't ask for your help. Recommend that a friend or relative apply for a job within your company. And really important, make recommendations about an improvement that can be made in the company. And I think that's really critical is, you really want the people working on your teams to be giving you feedback on improvements. And the key point here is an inspiring mission, right? This isn't just about having a missions and value statement and hanging it on the wall. You need to involve your teams in the creation, education, and expectations around the mission and values. Your why and how. Gets back to intention and strategy. And what I will caution everybody on, and we're going to run another poll in a little bit here, is that it's far worse to embark on a mission, purpose, values exercise and not have a long-term supportive strategy than to do nothing at all. You can get into real trouble if you're posting these things but you're not living them. And that's really what we're talking about. In fact, Enron had their values on their website, of which one was integrity, when all hell broke loose there. So it needs to be believable and trusted, right? And that's where we're going to get into trust. You need supporting programs to make sure you walk the talk. It's critical. So last slide on purpose-driven work. Employees who work for companies that align with their values perform better. They have better ideas. They execute those ideas better and even develop other people better. The payoff for attracting and retaining this type of talent, capable of innovating in the challenging market that we're in, it goes straight to the bottom line. You really want to engage your employees on this and have that connection and alignment. So next we're going to move into trust in the 3 spheres. One of my favorite quotes, you can change your behavior to match your values, or you can lower your values to match your behavior. You can change your behavior to match your values, or you can lower your values to match your behavior. And what that is speaking to is that every day we have moments of truth, and this is about walking the talk again and creating that trust. We have the why, we have the how. Are we living it on a day-to-day basis, or when we're faced with tough decisions, do we validate and talk ourselves into why it's okay, right? Self-justify the behavior. And that's lowering values, which then completely impacts the trust in your organization. So discipline, 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 critical. So the book Disputed Trust is a remarkable book for any company that's struggling with trust in the organization. I highly recommend it. It's Disputed Trust, the one thing that changes everything, and it's about how fast organizations can move when they're operating from this foundation of trust, and then how to build it also. And so this shows kind of low trust environment on the left, what's the risk, and on the right, in a high trust environment, what's the reward. So risk, you have redundancy, bureaucracy, politics, disengagement, turnover, and even worse, fraud occurs. In a high trust environment, the rewards are plenty. Increased value, accelerated growth, enhanced innovation, improved collaboration, stronger partnering, better execution, heightened loyalty. And so I think you can see the difference. Now, I brought up at the beginning of the session the power outage at the Super Bowl, right? And it kind of makes me think about the infrastructure of our country and our federal government. And I think it's a great representation of being in a low trust environment, right? We're in a low trust environment. Things don't happen. Everything kind of grinds to a halt. People can't move. And then looking at governments in particular, I think a great example of a high trust environment is the city of Portland, which I think we have somebody joining us on the call from Portland that could probably attest to this. But the increased value, accelerated growth, they're definitely in collaboration with their citizens. They are definitely an innovative culture. And you can see how fast things happen and the vibrancy that occurs. So those are just really 2 good examples. The other thing I want to talk about here a little bit, first let's run a poll. We have a poll on, you guys stated whether or not you have known mission and values. Now we're going to ask about how much of it is evident in the day-to-day. In other words, how much is real versus stated. So we'll watch for those results. About 50% voted. Okay, so we have a pretty evolved group here. Again, very inspiring. And 65% of your organizations, you're seeing the values lived on a day-to-day basis. And that's truly inspirational and not always the case. So that's wonderful. Because I did want to talk about organizations where it's not necessarily happening. A lot of times people are waiting for somebody else to do something. They're waiting for senior management to step up. It's got to be a top-down environment. And I've definitely seen great success in middle up and bottom up initiatives to change the culture of an organization around trust and values. And the trick is just really to own it and, you know, inspire others. It's contagious, and stop waiting, start making things happen regardless of where you are in the organization. I worked with a leadership development company, and they did some work for us around our core values at the organization where I was, and there was a lot of concern among the team that it wasn't top down, and if we don't have the top, what are we going to do? It's not going to work. And so I asked them about that and that concern, and they said actually in most organizations where they are doing work, it really is usually middle up and not top down. You have a tremendous ability to influence the top levels of your organization, and that's by owning it and really getting others on board. And oh, by the way, you're going to make a difference in the lives you touch while you're at it. You know, I think we've all heard the term a group of concerned citizens can change the world, right? A group of concerned employees can change an organization, right? You can make it happen. So good. So what side of the equation are you operating on? It sounds like a lot of you are on the good side, so that's great news. The last sphere is work mastery. And so what is work mastery when we speak about that? That's the urge to get better at stuff, right? Think about playing an instrument, right? We get to mastery through motion by trying, doing, and learning. And that's really an important point, too, is allowing for some level of failure as part of the learning process. And also the autonomy that we spoke about earlier. I mean, micromanagement should only be applied when you have the wrong person in a role, and that should really get your attention. And if you have great people and you're micromanaging, then that should get your attention even more so. They should have the freedom to do the job you hired them to do. And your job really is mentoring, encouraging, and enabling the work. So it's not kind of total hands-off. It's just how can you help them and then stay out of the way. And then mastery progression, when having to becomes wanting to. And that's getting back to employee engagement and what's called discretionary versus non-discretionary effort. And what I spoke to earlier about the 35% of payroll being left on the table. When employees are engaged, they're doing the work because they want to, and they're giving more effort and more time because they're inspired to do so and they're engaged in the work, which then leads to workflow, which many of you are probably familiar with. And that's the psychological state when hours pass and you lose track of time because you're so involved in what you're doing. And so if you're at work on an important project and all of a sudden it's 10 o'clock at night and you don't know where the time went, versus you're at work and you're on an important project and oh my gosh, it's 8 o'clock. Oh, it's 9 o'clock, I'm still here. It's 10 o'clock. Really, when you get to mastery, that's where the flow occurs. And it's really dependent on purpose and trust. So those two spheres are foundational, and then they lead to this. And enabling a path to work mastery is a key component of that engaged, connected workforce for sure. So those are the three spheres. And we're getting ready to wrap it up. I'm going to go through the tool. So we told you that you'd be receiving a tool with your attendance in the webinar. And the tool for this session is an assessment tool. And just based on the polls that we ran, it really sounds like you guys are doing well. But the tool is broken into the three spheres of influence. And so purpose-driven work, when you look at the assessment, there's actually a score associated with each of these areas. And you'll be able to score your performance for each of the three. And then also come out with an overall organizational engagement score. So this is a snapshot of section 1. So purpose-driven work, what's required to create that environment? Motivating purpose and vision, clear knowledge of the bigger picture, clear understanding of how my individual work contributes to the bigger picture, awareness of corporate citizenship and what's happening, how we operating in the world, charitable giving opportunities, ability to make a positive impact on customers and team members. People want to do well. They want to show up and make a difference. So enabling that is a big deal. Do the outcomes meet expectations? Are they able to deliver on what's asked of them? Volunteer opportunities, again, purpose-driven, and acknowledgement of the importance of work-life balance. Do people have the opportunity to experience that? So that's a purpose-driven work gauge. Mutual trust. The components of that are autonomy to do the work, a consistent culture of accountability. So not only am I held accountable, but are my peers held accountable? That creates tremendous trust and distrust if you're not doing that. Do we deploy and follow up on employee surveys? Do we ask for feedback? Do we acknowledge the feedback? Do we act on the feedback? Are we transparent in what we hear? Huge trust builder. Are we in a culture of diversity and respect? Do we have leadership development programs, including coaching? Now, this could be seen as playing into work mastery, but really this is about helping and enabling leaders to make sure they're walking the talk and building trust with their teams. Team building exercises become trust building exercises. Again, providing tools and resources to enable the work. Values-driven culture, as we've spoken about, and as we've also spoken about, walking the talk. Key components of the trust environment. And then last, back to mastery. Is there active career development going on? Communicate, communicate, communicate. That's one of the top things I hear in organizations is lack of communication. And so a strategy around mass, team, and individual communication is critical. Back to Daniel Pink. Do you have competitive pay and benefits so that money isn't a distraction for people? Are people able to complete projects and stay focused? Or are we constantly switching their gears and their focus? Next, ongoing performance feedback. That's critical. Opportunities for growth. Rewards and recognition programs that reward the right behavior. What's the behavior you're looking for, and are you rewarding that? And are you ensuring that you're not rewarding poor behavior? Team capability. Is the team capable to do the work? And dynamics within the team. So I'm going to leave you with one final thought. And this is a recent study by the Reputation Institute in 2012. It's people's willingness to buy, recommend, work for, and invest in a company is driven 60% by their perception of the company and only 40% by their perceptions of the products. That's a pretty significant statement. The bottom line here is who you are matters more than what you do. So, hopefully I've helped uncover the path to meaningful stakeholder engagement inside your organization, and hopefully you're inspired to take some action here regardless of your role in the organization. And as Jeremy mentioned earlier, when you see his and Paula's presentations, it's really going to continue to illuminate and bring it all together. So with that said, we are going to move to questions. So we'd love to hear in the chat window any questions that you have.
Great, and there's been a few questions that have come in during the talk, so we can get started with those, Kim, if that's okay. And then as people have more questions, you can put them in using the questions tool or the chat window. So, and Tracy, just to get your question really quick, will this presentation be made available? Yes, we're going to be sending out a link to both the PowerPoint and the audio of this session. So anybody who signed up will receive those. Let's see. So the first question that came in, Kim, could you speak to why mission statements don't work?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think oftentimes, well, there's a number of reasons, so I'll try to be brief and specific as possible. I think oftentimes they're created kind of in a room with only senior management, and it's how can we impress, right? They become ultra glorified and over wordsmithed, so that they don't connect with people. So I always say 5 words or less, make it inspiring. You know, my mission is to create a brighter future. I do that by bringing heart back to business. Really, I think they often don't work because they're not clear enough, and then they're not compelling or inspiring. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, that's great. That's great, and like I said, you know, if there's any follow-ons, post them in the question window. The next question, and it's actually, let's see, Emma has been studying the AA 1000 SES framework lately, and I'm going to unmute her, and she can give us just a little bit about what that is, and if there's a question about it as well, that'd be a great time. So Emma, you're unmuted. Go for it.
Great. Hi, thanks, Jeremy. So I've been studying it for a class project that I'm working on, and it's a framework for assessing, planning, and processing stakeholder engagement, and I've applied it with an assessment on internally for employee engagement through recognition programs. And I guess my question was originally just if you're familiar and not knowing, you know, how that fits in, but I'm interested in as a framework and how that matches other, you know, as it builds externally into engaging out external stakeholders, and wondered your familiarity and not knowing what the tool is that you're using and seeing how, you know, those they may overlap. But I think that, you know, just to share from, you know, an offline chat Jeremy and I had, is that it looks at like the whole system through, you know, if you want to look at the company, you know, all the internal employees as well as any external within the supply chain or any external audiences such as protesters or people boycotting or even just press coverage, that it responds from the aspect of all those different, you know, focus points. And so I'm interested in that, and just wondered if you were familiar too.
Wonderful. So honestly, no, I'm not familiar with that, so I'll definitely be interested to look into that. And I think, Emma, as we go through the next 2 sessions, that's where we're really going to start to see connection to outside the organization, because it all kind of plays. So the assessment that I'm using for employee engagement, right, focuses inside the 4 walls, but you're absolutely right. Then how does that translate outside? And how you bring in, to your point, protesters. And that just made me think of Susan G. Komen again, right? And so I'd love to look at that. And it is all interconnected. So as Jeremy does his presentation on multi-stakeholder engagement outside the organization, and we bring Paula through, I'd love to hear your feedback on you see that kind of weaving what this other tool that you're speaking of represents.
Good. So is that, did you want to hear from Paula right now, or do you want to do during her session?
I think after, when we get through the sessions, it'd be great to see the intersection that Emma's speaking
Okay.
of.
Great. So then the next question is from Allison. How do you foster engagement? Is the approach different for each organization?
That's a great question. Thank you, Allison. It really is. I mean, so the tool that I'm going to send out is a way for you to gauge, kind of self-assess your environment. And it's a tool actually that I created using kind of all the theories that I subscribe to. And what it helps you do is really isolate where you need to start. And there's actually an area to say, here's my top 3 opportunities, and what am I going to do about it as well. But really what's critical, regardless of the organization, is that why and that how are the starting points, because that's really where engagement then starts to live, and it gives life to it as a focal point, if you will.
Great.
Does that answer the question?
And Allison, I'll take you off mute. If do you have any follow-on, Allison, or surprised, Allison?
Hey, Allison.
Okay, I'll go ahead and mute her again. There's some background noise there. Oh, she says yes, thanks.
Cool.
Great. Okay, good. So let's see, Lila. I hope I'm saying your name right. Lila has a great point here. She got curious about the gray area between yes and no when it comes to values being present in the organization.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to take her off mute and just let her speak to that a little bit. Lila, go ahead. Are you there? Okay. Either there's a technology glitch or...
Did she elaborate on that in the chat window, Jeremy? Because I can speak to that as well. But if she has some
actually, if you want to speak to it. She was noticing that with an organization, so it must be a technical glitch because she's on, but it's not working. Her audio is not working. What she was speaking to, I believe, I'm going to do some interpretation, is that inside organizations, it's seldom that the values are either present or not present. It's more common that it is a shade of gray, that there's always work that can be done to bring them more present inside organizations. So anyway, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I would, and I think that's the discipline that I speak to is in the self-justifying behaviors and the trust forming, and part of where I come from on these things is acting with intention. So even times where maybe that value isn't fully present, ideally an organization has thought it through and the impact of their decision, and then they can really speak to and own the decision. I think that's really critical. But definitely there's gray areas. I like to use employee surveys to gauge how the company is doing, what employees speak about on a range, because it isn't a yes, no, even though the question was posed that way. How do employees feel that it's showing up, and then being able to look deeper by department or function or team, whatever it is, to understand where there might be larger gaps in other areas of the organization. So great feedback.
Great. Let's see.
And I have another example of it too. It's interesting, and I don't know if the person situation I'm speaking of is on the line, but I have a client, and they had a situation. I was on a call, and somebody came in and wanted to speak to my contact, and had a specific situation. They're talking, he said, "You're on speaker." Kim's on the phone, and she said, "Fine, that's okay." And it was a disagreement, some difficulties on a project with the other team members. And they're talking about how to deal with it and talking about how to deal with it. And then I just said, use the values, right? So this is a company that's committed to values. Everybody's on board, which is really critical. And then you can bring them into any tough situation, right? So values of teamwork, consistent improvement, and professionalism were showing up as things that she was hoping other people would be doing without saying it specifically that way. So, to deal with the gray areas is to really make it part of your common language in the organization, and something that everybody's comfortable and open to, talking about within the context of day-to-day business in a real way.
Great. Next question. How do you measure success when you're inside an organization? I think this is particularly around the employee engagement strategy. How do you measure success?
Yep. And that is the hard part, right? Is, there's all these case studies, there's all these statistics out there. How do you know that it's working and that you are achieving the intention, right? And I like to use employee surveys to gauge that. So it's a great measurement tool. Conversations, in your one-on-one interactions with people, just again, having the conversation present and always being aware of it is a great way. And then also, you can feel it. When it's kind of like those tribes, as the 5 levels of tribes within organizations, you can feel when people are engaged. That's the energy that you sense it. So you should start to see a shift. And that's, a less technical way, but it's definitely a palatable way to know that it's working. And I think organizations that have gone through that transition can definitely speak to that. But if you want real data and numbers, it's watching your results. You could capture your key performance indicators, right? Those things that I spoke about, productivity, turnover, defect rates, and watch how those change over time. Now, this won't be the only thing impacting it probably, but it's still a good indicator.
Great. Good. Well, this is the last question we're going to have time for this morning. There's a lot that can be done here. How do we determine where to start?
Okay, and that too, I think the assessment tool can help with. So it's a great way to just identify your gaps are, and I think it's interesting because to Layla's point earlier about shades of gray, the tool I've definitely intentionally created is a yes-no model. right? You're either living it or you're not. And so it really forces you to ask that question. It's like, you know, are you half pregnant? No, you're either living by values or you're not, in a consistent way. So the tool is really framed to help you determine where to start. And again, I just reiterate that regardless of what the tool says, if you don't have a why and a how, that's really the starting point.
Great. Thank you, Kim. Thanks for this today. Thanks, everybody, for joining us and listening in. I would love to get your thoughts and your feedback, so don't hesitate to send us an email after the session. Let us know what you took away, what you found most valuable, and if there's anything that you would have liked to have heard or would like next time. You're also going to be getting the slides, the audio presentation. And Kim, do you want to talk for a second about the tool?
Well, I think I've kind of covered it, and
okay.
So that will be attached. It's an Excel, but it's frozen, so it's kind of like a handwrite in, not key in. But you'll be able to. I'd love to get feedback on the tool also, and I'm trying to remember the person who mentioned the other model's name, but I would love to hear kind of her feedback as well as we move through this. And questions about the tool, feel free to email me. I'm happy to correspond on it.
Great. Next week, Tuesday, February 19th at 10 a.m. Pacific, we'll be back on the line talking about multi-stakeholder engagements outside the organization. So moving from inside the organization, for what we talked about today, looking at some of those stakeholders outside the organization. And I'll be talking about that. So come back and join us. Thanks again for everyone being here, and have a wonderful day.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Bye.